stud scrimmage Saturday, which will make 8.
Hear from Mr. Coach Kurt Cignetti here in just a moment as we start to looking into some of the changes that have occurred in the Big Ten this past season. A number of changes, especially at the head coaching position, 3 of them that kind of drew my attention to it. Michigan State, Michigan, and Penn State. We're going to take a little look at them a little harder tonight in terms of what does that mean for the Big Ten Conference, as they're already making some splashes in some recruiting battles already, flipping recruits and things of that nature. We'll take a quick look at that as well. We're going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the world of college football. But most importantly, thank you for joining us here on Hoosier Tailgate Live tonight on thehoosier.com. As always, I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith, here with you for about the next 45 minutes to an hour at the most. And as we talk a little bit about spring football as we head into week 3, ending up here quite in the next few weeks, as Indiana is well on track to working their way to the spring game here on the 23rd of April, which unfortunately is also NFL draft night. I've already seen some some complaints about the spring game kind of intruding in on the NFL draft, especially when you're thinking the number 1 pick is going to be Fernando Mendoza. But as always, we appreciate you being here tonight. Remember to hit the like and subscribe button there for us on YouTube. It's very important for us in terms of the algorithms and things of that nature as we try to grow the base here at thehoosier.com. You can also follow me on my YouTube channel as well, the Hoosier Tailgate. If you can, give us a like and subscribe to those pages. We greatly appreciate it as we try to be your top source for all things Indiana athletics there at thehoosier.com. And remember, get over to thehoosier.com. 50% off right now heading with that. You remember, you get your subscription to Rivals as well as the On3 network for all your information, recruiting, A to Z on all sports, as well as the athletic subscription to go along with that 50% off offer. And you're going to get a lot of great coverage from the guys there at thehoosier.com who've done a great job all through spring. And one thing about Sig, he only allows the media to watch a very 15-minute window right at the beginning of practice. He does not have them there for any more than that. You know, Ohio State's very open. They allow media to attend the entire practice, as do a number of schools, but SIG only allows them to be there for 15, and they're ushered out until after practice is over, where they can ask the questions in the presser. But the guys do a great job of getting as much information as they can in front of you, the Hoosier faithful, to keep you up to date on all things going there as well. Also, if you could head over to Spotify, Hoosier Tailgate over on Spotify, if you could get subscribe and a comment there, ranking or whatever they call it, rating, that also helps the podcast as well in terms of putting it in front of other Hoosiers that may not know about the Hoosier Tailgate, which is, I find, impossible, but appreciate it. I'm a little under the weather. I've been battling the illness here for the last 3 days. So if I lose my voice as we go through this, I apologize. If you feel like you got a question about something tonight, please feel free to put it out there in the chat box, and we will try to get, number 1, it answered for you, but also put it up so other people can see what is being asked. And we want to be as informative as humanly possible here tonight, as we've had some changes here and there as we've gone through it. You know, got the young defensive lineman back in the fold there at Indiana. He's back practicing with the squad. A week ago at this time, we were talking about why did he leave Hugan, and he is back and fully participating in drills, which is good to see, as always. And we want it to keep it that way. But appreciate you guys being along tonight and talking about some of the things that are going on right now in the world of college football. And there's a lot going on, especially in the Big Ten. You know, we just had the national championship. The Big Ten dominates again. If there's any question on which conference is the most dominating conference right now in the sports of football and basketball, it's the Big Ten Conference. Full stop. you don't take the two national titles of the premier uh, national championships, then it goes to the Big Ten conference as a whole, and not think that you have the best two conferences overall with the Big Ten. So that in itself, Dusty May has an Indiana connection. Congratulations to him. Very well done what he's done at Michigan there in a short period of time. But outside of that, we've talked about the Big Ten announcing that June 30th is going to be Indiana's day at Media Day. It's going to be held in Chicago this year. And so that will be right around the corner. And it's hard to believe that we're rolling towards the chance of spring game being on, and then everything going into a 2-month, 3-month shell there before we get going back to the everything else. But yeah, Brian, how you doing tonight, buddy? Appreciate you being here again as well. And we're going to get to hear some of the things that were talked about in the presser with Coach Sig here in a few seconds. One thing that has been very predominant here in the last maybe week is this executive order that the president put out that essentially it kind of takes the bulls by the horns, per se, as it pertains to years of eligibility and transfers in the transfer portal. And because right now there's nobody taking the lead. You know, you don't have anybody putting anything out as it pertains to try to solve some of these problems. And everybody's basically, has been awaiting what the government's going to do. And we, what happens when the government gets involved. There's a lot of things that happen in that. But at the same time, at least they're trying to put something that has some teeth to it that everybody can follow by. Now, Virginia's quarterback, Morris, who, he was trying to get, I guess, a 7th year of eligibility, if you can imagine that. A judge there in Virginia ruled against him. And so the opportunity of returning to Virginia for his next 7th year of eligibility has been thrown out. So there are some things there. But the NCAA, on top of this, is kind of in coordination with the president's executive order, is basically saying that a kid has 5 years to play 5 years. There would be no more red shirt per se. So if a kid enrolls at, let's say, at his earliest age, let's say 18 or 19 years of age, he would have 5 years to complete his eligibility at said institution, meaning he would graduate at the age of 23 or 24. So there'd kind of be a cap on the age limit per se with that. And there'd be no more red shirting. There technically wouldn't be any medical red shirts that we've heard and seen. It's kind of, if you get hurt and you lose a year, sorry, you're 24 years old and it's time for you to graduate college and move on, but you're not going to be here for your 25th and 26th years. We'll talk about why that has kind of entered the fray here in a second. And then as far as the transfer portal is concerned, one transfer during your 5 years of eligibility, you get one free transfer, immediately eligible wherever you go. And if you would happen to transfer again, you would have to go and sit for a year, which was the old rule that was kind of in play there the last few years before we got into the mess that we got into now with the transfer portal. So you get one free transfer, immediately eligible. If you try to transfer again, where there's no major changes as such as the coach leaving or being fired or whatever that scenario is at that school, you would have to sit a full season, and essentially you would lose a year of eligibility. So that is kind of what's being out there now. Now, what the executive order tied it to is if schools do not enforce the executive order and they receive federal funding for their institution, and about all of them do, with maybe the exception of a Northwestern per se, a stamp, and a private school, maybe not. as much. But anyway, if you could receive federal dollars at your institution, if you fail to enforce the executive order as written, then you're in jeopardy of losing your federal funding for that school year. So there is a little bit of teeth behind it in that respect. I don't think there's anybody that disagrees that 5 years of eligibility is plenty. There doesn't need to be any red shirting anymore, or medical red shirts, or whatever you want to call it. When you enter if you're 18, you got 5 years to get through all of your eligibility, graduate, play. So you would leave at the age of 23, or if you were somebody that was maybe a older senior per se, and they entered as a freshman, let's say they're 19 years of age, then they would get until they're 24 years old, 5 years being the clock that would be running. So it's now by years, not necessarily what they used to call the clock. So I don't think there's anybody out there that disagrees with that. We'll see if it has any other teeth to the matter as it pertains to enforceability. I'm sure there will be lawsuit to challenge the executive order or challenge the NCAA's interpretation of it, but it does kind of follow what the NCAA has already on the books, and therefore I think that's what you're going to find out, is that it's going to hold pretty true there. Now, the one thing that may not will be the transfer rule, and how that may or may not be as enforceable when it's all said and done, but we shall see. But that's something just to keep an eye on as we get here, because like I said, we're drawing down to the end of spring practice for every P4 school out there. Some have already done, some of them are, already putting their coaches on the road to get some recruiting done. Others are getting ready to wrap up with spring games and such. And you're going to blink and it's going to be start of camp. And these things are going to have to be settled to be enforceable as we head into this new season, as they go ahead here with everything in that respect. But it's a good thing to, like I said, keep an eye on with it all, but we'll find out with it and how that all is going to impact Indiana moving forward. And reason why I said the age thing is that there's been, ever since Indiana won the championship, it seems like everyone and their brother is so pissed that Indiana won that they're trying to find fault as to why Indiana won. And one of the biggest things as we sit here today is saying that, well, Indiana was playing with 25 and 26-year-olds. Well, if they go out and get transfers that have a body of work, maybe played for 3 seasons or 4 seasons, wherever they may be, and they come to Indiana, there's a high probability they're going to be an older player because they're juniors and seniors, and that's who you win with. Well, everybody was like thinking that was a complete advantage in front of Indiana. Well, I got word for you. Everybody played under the same rules. They had as much chance to get a guy like Fernando Mendoza as anybody, and Indiana got him over those schools. So, that's the thing that kind of irks me a little bit, is everybody's trying to find a reason why Indiana won everything this past year. And it upset the apple cart with the Blue Bloods because that was not supposed to happen. And everybody's trying to find fault with it. And therefore, you start seeing some of these things that are coming up as we go along here. But a good thing, like I said, to keep an eye on. We'll check with some of it. Ross Dellinger has a good article on it as well. If you want to find his article or X page, he's got a good, breakdown of that rule, as they would say, pertaining to it. It will be something that you could take a quick look at. But anyway, it gives you a chance from that in that respect. But moving ahead, let's talk about Indiana football here quickly, and then we'll move on to some of the other things I want to talk about. Indiana finishing up their 8th practice. Big scrimmage on Saturday. It's big for those young guys that are competing for spots. We'll put Sig's presser on here in a second to kind of hear what he had to say. But for guys like Tyler Cherry and Jacob Bell at the quarterback position, or Maverick Ginsky, I think, the kid from Brebeuf, who's a walk-on. Very important day for them as it pertains to separation, as will it be for guys at the running back spot or any spot on the depth chart where there's, quite a bit of competition for opportunities to play or be a backup. We're going to hear some Kids Six philosophy, but that's this Saturday. So that's a very important scrimmage for everyone involved, because as you know, SIG doesn't scrimmage very much when it comes to pure 11 on 11 tackle into the ground. And Saturday sounds like it's going to be a pretty good go. But let's hear from the man himself, Coach Signetti, courtesy of the Hoosier.com.
Book stud scrimmage Saturday, which will make 8, and making, I think, good progress as a team. So, questions?
Kurt, how do you see the competition kind of unfolding at center? Obviously, kind of Bray Lynch and Drew Evans. What are kind of the key things? You talked about traits you look for in centers, but what are the key things in this specific competition you're looking for?
Well, I think what you're trying to do is find your best 5 first, and then your best backups. First guy in, second guy in, third guy in. So we're working 5 centers right now, so we have depth at that position. And, Bray Lynch is sort of limited during spring ball. He had some cleanup surgery in the postseason, and has a little issue with his other leg, so we're really limiting his reps right now. And then, with Carter Smith out, it really thins us out pretty good. So working a lot of people there.
Matt up top and Sammy.
Hey, Coach. Kobe was in here earlier. He said he feels like he's really made a lot of progress. I know it's early in the spring, but he made the most of. It seemed like he made the most of a unfortunate situation last year in the fall when Lee went down. Just your thoughts on the progress he's made in 2+ years.
Really like what he's done on the field, his improvement. Coach Miller and Justice Ellison do a great job in that room with those running backs. I like that running back group. Turbo, Kobe, BB will be back. The freshman's running hard. Kono has missed the last 2 practices. But Kobe Martin has really taken a step. He's improved as much or more so as anyone in that first recruiting class. And every time he has an opportunity, he takes advantage of it. He practices really hard. He runs with good pad level. He's a load. Does a nice job catching the ball. It's important too. He's very consistent. Really like him a lot.
Sammy in the middle, then Pete.
Coach, I wanted to ask about Tyler Cherry and the growth he's made. He was coaching off the field, and then, it's only been 7 practices, but what have you seen both on the mental side and then the physical side that he could bring to your quarterback room?
Yeah, he wasn't available last season, so we tried to keep him involved as much as we could. He's taken a big step since he was here before. When he came in, he was under 200 pounds. He's up to about 220, 225, 6'5". He's way ahead of where he was as a freshman. And he's done some good things, and he's only going to get better. And he's got, he's got to tighten his footwork up a little bit, tighten up his release. He missed a couple throws out there today. But I really like the way he's improving. What we did today actually is we have more young quarterbacks that I needed to find out about. So we sat Josh today. That's the first time I've done that, but we needed to do it to kind of find out more about these guys. I needed to see them against better competition. I needed to see Tyler Cherry with the 1s. I needed to see Maverick Geske with the 2s. And I needed to get Jacob Bell more work because he's got a live arm. And I probably need to get him some 2 work here. And so Grant Wilson hasn't gotten work the last couple of days, but he's a veteran that's played and he's very much in the mix. But Tyler, I like the steps he's taken. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. He's really smart. He's dedicated. There were some people that didn't think he'd come back from that knee, and he did. He had his mind made up, and he was committed to playing football. And I like where he's at.
Pete upper left and center.
Yeah, Kurt, with Charlie Becker, what's the next step for him? What does he need to really improve on, and how do you assess the overall receiving corps?
I think the way he finished the season, he was one of the top receivers, certainly in the Big Ten Conference. Another guy that took advantage of his opportunities, and then, we couldn't take him off the field. He tweaked his hammy last Saturday. So he did the same thing in August. So I don't know if he'll be back or not the rest of spring. And certainly we miss him being out there right now. You know, Davion Chandler is a guy that has taken advantage of his opportunities. Bond always practices really hard. Tyler Morris made a few catches today. I see Nick Marsh and Chaz coming on. And I think you got to remember about our receiving corps, like even in the past, like Elijah Surratt would go 5 days and not catch a ball in camp because, you know, first of all, what Haynes does is tough. And this particular spring is a little different than last spring. Last spring, we had a lot of offensive linemen, a lot of veteran offensive linemen, and we were replacing some guys on the D-line. It's the exact opposite this year. So, you know, we get in the team periods, quarterbacks haven't had a ton of time to throw, which affects the receiver's ability to catch the ball. So, you know, I think we'll be okay. I think the emphasis is probably bringing the two young ones along, Chandler and Bond, and getting Marsh and Chaz going and learning the offense so they're not thinking, which I see progress every day. And it was really good to see Tyler Morris make a couple catches today.
Seth, on your left is Zach.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about Tyler. He was a guy that you were going to count on last year until he got injured, and obviously he's back on the field now. How did you see him attack his rehab, you know, after getting hurt last spring? And I guess where is he at from what you've seen so far this spring?
Yeah, well, you know, knees are tough. They take a while, and it's a process. And, you know, I think he was a little tentative early on in the spring, and I think he's starting to gain confidence in it now, and I think it shows up like today it showed up. And, you know, he also returned punts at Michigan and did a nice job of catching the ball, which that's the number one job criteria for the punt returner, make sure when the play's over, we got the football. So, and he's a real smart guy that can learn a lot of positions.
Zach, be on your right.
Some great comments there from Coach Signetti. He did go on to talk a little bit about the secondary. Sharp's progression has has taken another step forward, as has the combination in the secondary of Zachary Preston and Farrell, two safeties. They talked about those two, and then they talked about A.J. Harris, the kid from Penn State, and then Gandy from Pitt, who was here a year ago, and those two guys into the boundary corner. So defensively, as we had said, even when we talked about this, it shows signs that they're going to fulfill some of these spots where there are some questions at. Offensively, it was good to hear some talk about Tyler Cherry's progress in terms of where he is at. I mean, there's no question the kid passes the eyeball test. And that's what Sig was kind of referencing there, 6'5", 225. He's a big kid that can move. He's only going to get better within their system. It's reps. And, you know, I think he pulled a veteran coaching move today by saying, we know what Hoover can do. And we know what Grant Wilson can do. We need to see what Tyler Cherry can do with the ones. The kid from Burbuff, Gansky, and then Bell as well, and really try to hone in on those two, on those guys, because we don't want to come out of spring not knowing what we have. And we talked about the concern at that position as it pertained to depth and things of that nature. So pretty good take there. And of course, the wide receiver room and running back room is really taken off and done well. So again, all things considering, I think they're moving ahead at the speed that you would think. Yeah, they got some guys that have some tweaks here and there. Becker is out with a tweak of a hamstring. But again, they know what Charlie can do. They're going to know, like, Tyler Moore is coming back from injury. How does, Preston Marsh going to fit into the system of things? Bond, Davion Chandler, those type of guys who need all the reps they can get. And that's why Saturday will be a very important day, offensively speaking. They're a little short with the offensive line. And one thing philosophically that he pointed out in that presser as well, up front, people are trying to pigeonhole who's going to be the center. And it's easy to think that, you got to need a center, right guard, left tackle, right tackle. Excuse me. And SIG is more about who are our top 5 guys, who are our top 5 offensive linemen, And then who out of those 5 can be a center, then who are going to be your top 8 offensive linemen, and kind of fill in behind there. But that's what his philosophical approach is, as opposed to just, okay, this guy can snap because he's a center. He's of the mind, and show his Coach Bove said about getting the 5 guys out there that are your best, and he'll coach one up to be the center. They've done it, and I don't think there's any question that they will continue to do that as we go ahead here. Talk a little bit here about some things that have happened in the Big Ten of late. Excuse me as I'm trying to clear my throat there. This past offseason, there was a lot of new hires in the Big Ten as it pertains to new coaches coming in. We know what Michigan had with Sharon Moore in that situation that cost him his job. We know what happened at Michigan State, and then, of course, at Penn State with the changeover there as well. But at the same time, when you look at those 3 schools, I think they're all big-time hires. And I do think overall, when you look at these head coaches, they all bring great winning records with them. Their success, their experience, all those type of things that they bring to the table. And it's going to be a much different league heading into 2026 as opposed to what was there in 2025, especially with some of the schools that there was controversy at. Penn State, they got rid of Franklin. They had a change in staff there. Michigan, with all the turmoil that was going on there from even prior to the Coach Moore situation. And then Michigan State, where that was never quite a great reunion or marriage. There was some controversy there, and it showed by the way those teams played and ultimately finished up in the Big Ten, but not anymore. Kyle Whittingham's at Michigan. He is probably one of the best hires of the offseason, in my opinion. A guy that has tons of experience. He took over for Urban Meyer at Utah and has done nothing but move them ahead every year and won at a school that isn't, a household name out west. And he was able to do that. And you look at what he's inheriting at Michigan, he's only bringing in 3 of his former players from Utah and 18 total transfers in all. Some of those guys that are transfers are tight ends, but again, they got a quarterback that is going to be something to behold if they can get him settled into a system that doesn't put a bunch on his shoulders, and that's where Kyle Whittingham will not do it. He's brought an experienced coaching staff with him, basically guys that has been with him for a while. A lot of similarities to Coach Cignetti in that regard, and how they do things, what their preparation's like, and how they go about taking care of business. And when you got a kid like Bryce Underwood, who's got all the talent in the world, but he's still a young kid, you're going to see them be very protective of him. And also, they brought in the kid from Colorado State to be his backup, Braden Fowler, who was pretty good last year at Colorado State. I believe he's got another year left, if not maybe 2. But at the same time, that they've got some players there at Michigan that he walked into a very, very good situation. He essentially retired or left Utah because he was unhappy. He kind of felt he'd taken it to the point where he wasn't going to move the needle any further. And there was kind of some falling out there with the AD. He ends up retiring, and Michigan things unfolds. And I guess he wasn't sold on retiring. And Michigan came calling, and he answered the phone, and he took himself as well as other guys on his staff, and he's gone into Ann Arbor with a very, very good roster that he has in front of him there on both sides of the football. And how this impacts Indiana plays at Michigan, which is a tough place to go play. And they're going to walk in there to a new look Wolverine school with a guy like Kyle Whittingham, who's a little bit about toughness, likes to run the football, but he also likes to spread it out. But they'll do a great job in what they do. And I guarantee it, Bryce Underwood will not be a quote unquote featured in their offense as a sophomore. They'll be a little bit more conscious of his situation and try to establish that Michigan running game and everything there, and a defense that's stingy. And that Wolverine team will have a pretty good group of players coming back for Coach Whittingham. And like I said, he only brought in 3 of his Utah players. So that's a situation there where I thought they did a great job of getting the right person there at Michigan State. Or I'm sorry, at Michigan. Now then you get over to East Lansing, and Pat Fitzgerald, who had a situation at Northwestern, which I'm not quite sure was always fair for him there at Northwestern in terms of what went there, what, kind of went down there. But, he comes over to Michigan State, brings in 29 total transfers, 10 on offense, 14 on a defense. He keeps their D coordinator, Rossi, which I was a little surprised about that. He brings in Nick Sheridan, who's got some ties to Indiana as the offensive coordinator. The Childs kid went to Northwestern, so the quarterback they had a year ago is no longer there. So we'll have to see what all happens at there. They also brought in the kid from UCF, Cam Francher, to compete with some of the guys that they have there. But this is going to be a very youthful, new look Michigan State team. But you can guarantee it, just like with that Michigan, this is going to be a team that has a identity with Pat Fitzgerald, and an identity that never count them out of any game. Because when he comes from Northwestern and where he doesn't have all the luxuries of a Michigan State, and he was able to do what he did at Northwestern for the number of years that he did it, you guarantee that he's going to be pretty darn good there at Michigan State. He made a lot of good hires. Know quite a few of the guys that he did hire I have great respect for in the coaching world. And I've always had a great deal of respect for Pat and what he's accomplished. And I just think that, again, for a school that was looking for the quote unquote right fit, I think they got it with Fitzy at Michigan State, because I do think his mentality as a coach fits the mentality of Michigan State football and East Lansing. So again, 2 big hires in the state of Michigan that will go a long way in terms of how this conference race will shape out next season. Probably not as deep or as good as what Michigan has in the hopper. We'll see how well they grow. But I do like the fact that Michigan State did get themselves a really good hire there with Pat Fitzgerald, who had set out the last year because of the situation that he at Northwestern. Hey, we're going to jump out, take a quick break here so I can get a quick drink to clear my throat. We'll be back. We'll talk more about Penn State and finish up all the things here on the Hoosier Tailgate Live on thehoosier.com.
Hoosier fans, take a moment and soak this in. Indiana is national champions, history made, banners raised, a season we'll talk about forever. And now it's time to wear the moment. Head to My Fanatics store and grab the official Indiana Hoosiers national championship gear. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, and championship designs built for fans who lived every snap, every fourth down, every win. This is authentic Fanatics gear, not knockoffs. Designed to last, comfortable, and ready to rep anywhere you go. Whether you're at the game, around town, or watching next season knowing who sits on top, this is how you show it. Supplies won't last forever, and once it's gone, it's gone. So don't wait. Hit the Hoosier Tailgate Fanatic store, lock in your Indiana National Champions gear, and wear it with pride, because this championship is forever.
Hoosier fans, listen up. If you're serious about the Hoosiers, thehoosier.com is where you need to be. We're talking insider reporting, film breakdowns, recruiting, and transfer portal coverage you won't get anywhere else. And when you subscribe, it's more than just one site. You also get full access to Rivals, On3, and The Athletic at no extra cost. Right now, you can jump in for just $1. Then it renews annually at the regular rate. $1. Total access. No brainer. Head to thehoosier.com and join today.
Welcome back here to the Hoosier Tailgate. Sorry, I needed to clear my voice there, everyone. I know, Robert, I think I answered your question in chat there. Childs from Michigan State, he did transfer and he did commit and went to Northwestern. So he'll be at Northwestern this season competing for their big time starting quarterback position. And, you know, again, there's a guy there at Northwestern that may make Aiden a better quarterback overall because he had a game against Indiana. You know, the kid's talented. There's no question about that. He is a talented kid. Now, if they can get consistency with him, you know, that's the key thing that he kind of lacked at Michigan State was his consistency. But I do think he will be in good hands there at Northwestern this season. So again, the Big Ten is shaping up to be, again, a top tier conference. And you've got to think as an overall conference, it has really grown over the last 2 years, especially since SIG has arrived, and kind of pushed the envelope, moved the needle a little bit amongst the other, you know, dormant schools out there, you know, saying, well, if Indiana can do it, we can do it. And I think you've seen schools starting to pony up, starting to make a real effort to provide the opportunities of NIL and rev share and things of that nature. And then, of course, with the addition of the schools out west, like USC and like Oregon, you know, before, again, you talk about these blue bloods, and a lot of these blue bloods, like in Oregon, I call a blue blood now, but USC, for instance, you know, or you look at them like Michigan and Ohio State, and they have this mystique about them that before you even get to the field, you're down 7 because of who you think they are. And the reality of it is they may not be as good as you. And I think Indiana proved it this year. When you go between the white lines and you believe in what you're doing, anybody can beat anybody on any given Saturday. Not always going to be pretty, but at the same time, it kind of has broke the, you know, the overall impressions of teams before you even played them. You know, I guarantee it. When you looked at the schedule, especially for Indiana over the years, and you saw they had to play Michigan and Ohio State, and it was like, oh, they're never going to beat those guys. You know, you were already beat before whatever. But now, because the proof is in what SIG has done, anybody can beat anybody, and anybody can come to the forefront of being the top tier team. And I think the Big Ten this year, there's a lot of teams that, you know, could be a potential Big Ten champion this year and kind of a potential national championship. Because I think you're going to see those teams that are in that middle to latter pack as they were a year ago are going to be much better, going to be much stronger, making the conference that much better and that much stronger. And it's going to create a pretty exciting Big Ten race as we go on to it. Last school that did a great job, and I tell you, for the most part, the hiring at Penn State, for the most part, was a complete and utter you-know-what show. because it looked like it was completely mishandled from the start with the AD. There was rumors about SIG, and there was rumors about this and about that, and nobody was biting. There was Urban Meyer overtures and, all these things that are out there, and it just made Penn State look bad because nobody was stepping to the plate until Matt Campbell entered the picture, and what looked like a complete, like I said before, blank show, it turned out to be a penthouse hire with Matt Campbell from Iowa State. And here's a guy that had been courted by numerous Big Five or Group of Five schools, blue bloods alike, to come and, have a better situation than he had at Iowa State. And he kept staying at Iowa State. Now, looking at it, he probably felt again that Penn State was going to give him his best opportunity. And he's the premier school in the state of Pennsylvania. And so that was a great hire. I've known Matt since his time at Toledo. I've known a bunch of guys on his staff. Again, complete respect for who they are and how they go about their business and what they do, from recruiting to coaching to how they handle people and treat people. A first-class staff through and through, just like I said at Michigan State with those guys there. But what Matt Campbell's done has kind of followed the Kurt Cignetti approach to being a former head coach at a school and moving to another school. He brought in 32 transfers, of which 24 are former Iowa State players that he had at Iowa State, including their quarterback, Rocco, who is a pretty darn good football player. We saw some of their film and some of the teams that Indiana played as we looked at them this past year. A very dynamic offense, a very stingy defense, but he's bringing 24 players with him from Iowa State, and you know what that means, like it did for Indiana when Coach Cignetti brought those group of guys from James Madison with him. They hit the ground running because those guys know the show, they know the deal, and they're able to communicate that with the new guys and rally the troops per se. And all of a sudden, you've got an experienced football team that has had success at Iowa State coming into Happy Valley with a coach that is very player-centric and very, very settled in what they do on offense and defense. They are a very multiple offense, as we saw a year ago, a little bit more passing this past year. Defensively, they form out of the 3-3 stack, but that doesn't mean as much as it used to. You'll see four-man front and everything with them. But when you look at their roster, with these guys that they brought in, they brought, I think, all of their tight ends with them. They brought a couple guys in their offensive line with them. Their offensive line, outside of who they have returning, is probably going to be the experience on their offense, because the guys that have played, they've got significant number of snaps and they're juniors, or redshirt seniors. So again, that quote unquote age, we're going to have to sit here and calculate how old is Penn State's football team, because if they're 25 or 26, nobody has a chance, type of BS that we're hearing now. I don't think that's going to matter too much to Coach Campbell and his crew. But again, he kind of has brought that SIG philosophy there into Happy Valley by bringing 24 of his former players, plugging them into what they need as on offense and defense. And their schedule next year kind of favors them in some respects, because they have a very nice schedule. If I remember correctly, Indiana's not on it. That's for sure. That's number one. Indiana's not on it. Let's see here if I can get this up per se. That's not what I wanted. Let's see, Penn State, and those that are watching this on the vertical stream will have to bear with me here, but they play non-conference wide. They got Marshall and Temple and Buffalo. And then in the Big Ten, they go Wisconsin, Northwestern, USC, at Michigan. Then they go Purdue, Washington, Minnesota, Rutgers, and Maryland. So you can see there that they have a pretty good schedule for them heading into this change in staff with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 home games next year, and no Ohio State, no Oregon on the docket. Now, we'll see how Washington plays out, but you got to think that that team with that schedule is going to be a pretty good looking ball club for Coach Campbell with what he has to deal with in terms of his schedule next year. And you got to like where they're at heading into it. So those three coaches, I think, changed the landscape considerably in the Big Ten because they're all three well-respected guys that have proven they can win at schools that have less than what some others have. They did more with less, per se, at Utah, at Iowa State. Iowa State their budget is horrible at Iowa State. Their NIL deals at Iowa State was horrible. And some of the big reasons why Campbell left, because they weren't going to get any better. And then you look at Fitz, the situation at Northwestern. Again, these guys have stepped into a pretty rich environment at Michigan State, Michigan, and Penn State, and at the same time have kind of put the other Big Ten schools on notice that those three schools will not be easy pickings come Big Ten season next year. And it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But a lot of good hires there, in my opinion, for those schools that has bettered the Big Ten in a lot of ways. And also, we see some SIGisms in there, especially at Penn State. That's what stood out to me. 32 transfers, 24 former players of Iowa State's coming with him. That, to me, screamed Coach Signetti through and through as it pertains to what Sig did when he came to Indiana and brought a pretty good bunch of James Madison players that transformed the Indiana's football in that regard. So those, to me, I just wanted to take a look. They really stood out to me. I've been studying all three of them quite well. What they have coming back, who they've got at the trigger point. You know, I do think that Michigan and Penn State have the best scenario at the quarterback position, although Bryce Underwood is still going to be a young, unproven player that really did not have a great year last year in that respect. And I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic when it's all said and done there with everything that goes in front of them there as we get towards the season. I know there's a question that popped up here. Did Maryland keep their coach? Yes, he is back. Now, he's probably on the proverbial hot seat, as is Riley at USC. Now, the other coach that came in to the mix in the Big Ten, and I thought it was a good hire, was the guy that took over for Coach Sig at James Madison and did nothing but win there. I think going to make a huge impact at UCLA, but it's going to be a while before that transforms into what they need there. But Bob Chesney who has kind of been on the rocket ship in terms of his trajectory as a head coach, because he started at a very low level, came up through the ranks, got an opportunity at James Madison when Sig left, continued to win at James Madison, got him into the playoffs this year, and then he got taken out west to the UCLA. And fresh approach, new type of avenue out there, and who knows what could happen for them. But I don't necessarily think it was of the hires that were made this year as good as those three other schools that we talked about tonight and everything. Remember the spring game coming up on the 23rd there at Memorial Stadium. Right now, 8 o'clock is my understanding of the kickoff, even though it is on the same night as the NFL draft. Maybe they'll have that up on the Jumbotron. Who knows? Big scrimmage for Saturday. We'll try to have you a recap of what occurred in that scrimmage next Thursday night as we continue on with our spring football season here on the Hoosier Tailgate. But for now, I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. You've been watching the Hoosier Tailgate live right here on thehoosier.com. Good night, everybody.